My name is Purvi Shah. I am the director of the Bertha Justice Institute at the Center for Constitutional Rights. For those of you that are new to the center, the center was founded in 1966, and we are a civil rights, human rights organization. And part of what makes me so excited about bringing this conference here today, which our theme is 50 years of radical lawyering since Freedom Summer, is that the Center for Constitutional Rights was founded in the throes of Freedom Summer. That four of our founders, Arthur Kanoy, Bill Kunstler, Morty Stavis, and Ben Smith, were actually very active in the civil rights movement, and particularly in supporting the Black freedom movement in the South. Before I get too far into kind of today, I wanted to say sort of maybe three inspirations and intentions for today's conference. I think first and foremost, we wanted to mark sort of an incredible moment in history, 50 years since Freedom Summer. Freedom Summer in 1964. Actually, I think we're almost to the week when Freedom Summer started, where dozens volunteers and students went down to Mississippi to register Black voters, along with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, or SNCC. And we thought at CCR it was really important to honor sort of this moment, 50 years from this important moment where students and young people were a part of building a militant tradition, or a militant wing of the civil rights movement, which fundamentally changed the course of I think, their lives, but also changed the course of the civil rights movement. And we're going to be talking more about Freedom Summer as the day goes on. I think the second thing we wanted to do is, for those of us that are radical lawyers, you know, we don't really get many times and opportunities for us to join together and to have radical dialogue. There's lots of spaces where we get together, where we talk kind of nuts and bolts of lawyering, where we talk about cases, and you know, we're really sort of in the weeds. And I think today was really about getting together and sort of connecting radical lawyers that have a radical imagination about the practice of law. And more importantly, being in a collective conversation about sort of how do we as lawyers support social justice movements. And then finally, the last thing that I think this is about really is about building community. For many of us that have been social justice activists, but particularly social justice lawyers, that at times this work is really isolating. Especially because the infrastructure is really different in different parts of the country, in the US South, in the center of the country, and the Central Valley of California, right? That we're sort of isolated as we do this work. And so the idea was, as we want to talk about what it means to be a radical lawyer, as we want to connect to the history of radical movements, that we're also trying to build a community together, and a community that can hopefully sustain us. A conference is a one-day thing, it's an episodic thing. But the idea is that partially today, we're hoping that you'll get to meet some new people, and that you'll get a chance to engage more deeply on some questions that have been milling around your head, and then sort of start to build a community of people that you can be engaged in that dialogue over the long run. A little bit more about the Bertha Justice Institute. The Bertha Justice Institute was started about 2 years ago in partnership with a great foundation called the Bertha Foundation. And really what we're doing collaboratively with the Bertha Foundation is really trying to build a pipeline for radical lawyers. Knowing that for many of us, doing this kind of work, you really have to cobble together your path. And I know many of you sitting in the room are young lawyers, emerging lawyers that are starting to figure out, you know, where is my place in social justice work and where am I going to land? And the intention behind building the Bertha Justice Institute, we're in our second year now, was really to say that there should be an institution that is supporting people in that process of trying to figure out not only how do I learn the trade of lawyering, but how do I build the political consciousness and the political community that can support me in that work. And more specifically, the Bertha Justice Institute, in collaboration with the Bertha Foundation, has really been focused around building a wing of lawyers that are committed to social movements. And not just in the United States, and this is really exciting, is that the Bertha Justice Institute and the Center for Constitutional Rights are part of the Bertha Justice Initiative, which is an international network of lawyers that are coming together, some of the most radical lawyers in the world, many of whom we've actually invited here today from South Africa, from Colombia, from Mexico, from Haiti, from the Philippines, that are at the forefront of pushing a radical practice of law in their countries and building a new generation of lawyers across the world that are supporting social movements. Thinking about how social movements are becoming, increasingly our struggles are transnational as we fight corporations, as we fight governments that are in collusion with each other. How do we actually build a global flank of lawyers that can support social movements? So we're really pleased to be bringing you this event today in partnership with the Bertha Foundation and many of our partners from the Bertha Network, who you'll hopefully get to meet throughout the course of the day. Before I want to talk a little bit more about Freedom Summer, but I wanted to introduce Sarah Valentine, who is the dean of academic dean here at CUNY Law School, and CUNY, which has been a great partner to CCR over the years. We're just so pleased that not only we're getting to have this conversation, but we're getting to have it here at CUNY. So I'm gonna let the dean make a few comments.
Very few. But I really wanted just to say, welcome to CUNY School of Law. Like she said, I'm the academic dean, and I bring greetings, though, not only from our dean, Michelle Anderson, who couldn't be here today, but from every single student, faculty member, and staff member here at the law school. We are thrilled to have you. The activism, spirit, and vision embodied by CCR and the Bertha Justice Institute, but more radically, internally in each of you, is mirrored here at the law school. From fighting stop and frisk and worker exploitation to here in the US, to helping support the foundations of civil society movements around the globe, the family of CUNY Law activists, and that's many of you I see out there, join you as you take the spirit of Freedom Summer into the future. It's fitting, I think, that the conference is here, and I speak for all of us at the law school, that we're honored, truly honored to have you, and for some of you, honored to have you back. I hope that the conference is able to help you reinvigorate each and all of you, to reinvigorate us, help us go forward, because sometimes I think we need that, because it is isolating work that you do. And I think it's the kind of conference and ability and workspace to come together that can help us, each of us, feed from each other and allow us to move this fight forward into the future and to fight as long and as hard as it takes. We are honored to have you, and thank you, all of you, for the work that you do.
Thank you so much, Dean Valentine. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about how we've structured the day. So I've been to a lot of conferences. I've now put on a lot of conferences. And my experience generally in conferences is you spend a lot of the day being talked at, right? And that's important. We're here. There's some of the world's brilliant lawyers, New York's brilliant lawyers, radical lawyers are here. And I think we're all hungry for understanding some of the stories of the work they've done, the cases that they've worked on, the struggles that they're a part of. But I think we've designed this day to not just be a space in which you can receive information, but that you can actually share your own ideas and your own imagination. And we structured the day where the morning we have a lot of sort of hard-hitting panels on some of the most important issues that are facing us today, from sort of the defending people who have been accused, defending people in criminal prosecution, to looking at the persecution of LGBTQI folks in Uganda, to the Marikana mine workers struggle in South Africa. We're looking at some of the most important and pressing, I think, social movements and critical sort of issues of today. But we've also structured the day where we are hoping that in the second half of the day, we're going to do two different things. We're going to have some workshops where, in a more intimate setting, we think folks can really engage in deepening some of their analysis and their skills, right? So that you're not just walking away with sort of cases and ideas and imaginations of sort of really great examples of lawyering, but that in this space, you're acquiring some new knowledge and skills. And so we're hoping that in the workshop space that you'll get a chance. And those range in content from sort of looking at the sort of new terrain of the internet to thinking about political economy, to looking at the issue of Palestine. So we're really hoping you'll enjoy those sort of more deeper dives, and those are sort of 2-hour sessions. But we also thought that the last part of the day should really be a chance for folks to kind of start to vision, how do you be a lawyer doing this work? And so we've invited some of our colleagues that are amazingly, hold an important place in the practice of radical lawyering. But in addition are some great people to start to ask about how did you get where you got, and what is your personal ecology, and how do you stay grounded in the work you're doing, and what's been difficult about it. So we're going to have these sessions called Real Talk sessions, which are going to be conversations with movement lawyers in the field, and where you're going to get a chance to ask them some of the practical questions about how do you do this work and how do you stay in the work for the long haul. And so the last thing I'll say sort of about the conference itself is my offering and my request to you is that you approach the day from a place of curiosity. We're not here, when you put on a conference and you hear people that have lots of years of experience, I think sometimes it's easy to feel like other folks have the answers. And I don't think that we do. I think what we're trying to do today is to say that we are in this conversation together. The new generation of people that are going to be doing this work, there's an absolute need for your creativity, for your passion, for your innovation. And so what we're trying to do today is create a container in which we can be in this conversation together. So that curiosity and that willingness to offer your insights and the willingness to meet people and really try to treat this space as a community building space is really what I would hope that we could do over the course of the rest of the day. So let me transition to Freedom Summer a little bit. So Freedom Summer, 1964, in June, you had hundreds of students going down to Mississippi with SNCC, and I mentioned this earlier. And I don't think that the students, at that time particularly understood what they were getting into. I think that they knew that they felt morally outraged at what was happening around Jim Crow segregation in the United States. But I think, like maybe many of you, they were sort of, they were at the beginning of a summer experience, perhaps not knowing what the summer was going to, what it was going to entail. And at the end of the summer, four civil rights workers were killed, hundreds were beaten, bombings, and the students had spent the summer basically trying to register black voters in Mississippi. And Bob Moses and some of the other brilliant strategists and leaders of SNCC, I think they were told that you can't go down into Mississippi. You can't do this. It's too dangerous to do this. And and young people, black and white, that went down, their families were told them, you can't do this. This is too dangerous. And I think that radical imagination of what's possible, the radical imagination to say, yeah, you know what, it is dangerous and it is scary, and yet it needs to be done. I think it is that radical tradition that we're hoping, that spirit that we're hoping to bring into the room. And the question I want you to be asking over the course of the day as we ground ourselves really in the history of Freedom Summer, because I think that if we don't ground ourselves in history, I think it's difficult to know where we want to go. And so today, part of this quick morning piece is to ground ourselves in the history, but it's also then to start asking ourselves, what is the call to action for us as young people, as people that are emerging into our roles, or maybe as people who have been doing this work for a while? What is the call to action for today? What is the radical step that we can take today that mirrors the kind of courage that folks took in 1964 in Mississippi? So I'm not a historian, although I will tell you I've gotten quite nerdy on Freedom Summer in planning this conference. I've really enjoyed reading a bunch of different books on it, and if you're interested in that, you should absolutely come and talk to me. But there's a brilliant film that's been made called Freedom Summer by Stanley Nelson. And it's going to be broadcasted on PBS on June 24th at 9 p.m. on a show called The American Experience. And it's distributed by Firelight Media, which is an amazingly progressive media company that is working to not only get this film out, to sort of get people to understand what happened in Freedom Summer, but is using it to also engage people in a conversation today about black and brown people, about voting, and they're going to be doing a ton of community-based work around the film. So they were gracious enough to let us show a clip of this film, which I thought would be a great way to very quickly ground us in the history of Freedom Summer. And as we're going to roll the clip in about a second. I'm going to show you a trailer for the film so you can get excited about it, and you can watch it on the 24th of June. We're going to show about a 13-minute clip of the film. And it is the morning, it's 9 a.m., you've just got your coffee, you're getting settled into here, you're starting to open up to the day's experience. I want you to take a moment and breathe, because this is a heavy clip, because what happened in 1964 in Mississippi was heavy. And so I want to give you a little bit of a heads up that we're going to watch some real footage from there, and we're going to be grounding ourselves in the reality of what was going on in Jim Crow segregation, so we can ground ourselves in the reality of what the moment asks for us today. So.
day-to-day work was canvassing. The work itself is as simple as it is tedious. We walk down these dusty red country roads in the Negro sections, go from tumble-down house to tumble-down house, and if they come out to the porch or let us in, we talk to the people. That's it. That's what we do. That's what the segregationists are trying to stop.
My motivation for drawing was I wanted to make sure that I was capturing the flavor of a moment, the intensity of a moment. And you are in that situation, everything becomes memorable. The intensity of those situations become indelible. That happened to me twice in my life. One was on D-Day, and the other time was in Mississippi.
The work was frustrating. There was a very small return for the number of doors we knocked on. You could see in people's faces the struggle they were going through. Many really wanted to register, but were fearful. I'm not going to register to vote because I work for a white family and I think they might fire me. Or I've heard that houses get burnt down when people go to register to vote, or I'm worried about my kids. We were doing something very positive, but also in the backs of our minds was the negative that could befall someone we were talking to. Because the danger was real. It was absolutely real.
Late this afternoon, the search for Cheney, Goodman, and Schwerner shifted to the Pearl River near Philadelphia, Mississippi. Boats carrying game wardens and FBI agents are now dragging the river.
Have you seen the spot down here, sir?
That's right.
What do you think of this?
I believe him joke was planned and sitting off up in New York laughing at us Mississippi folk.
Can you tell me what you think of this whole thing?
Well, I believe it's a big publicity hoax, but if they're dead, I feel like they asked for it.
It was always on our minds. And we were constantly aware that they had not been found. There was a pall over the whole project because of that.
In Meridian, the wife of missing Mickey Schwerner, Rita Schwerner, flew from Oxford.
Rita Schwerner plays an important role here. This is her husband, after all, who's the leader of the three missing men. And she puts a face on them. And she plays an enormous role in making this seem like these are real people, and we need to pay attention to these real people whom something terrible has happened to.
They're being held somewhere, or something happened, and I am going to find the answer. If this means driving every back road, every dirt road, every alley in the county of Neshoba, I will do it.
The press swarmed all over her. And I think they wanted her to cry, and they wanted her to be a new widow, that they would catch her at the moment of her widowhood, and she wouldn't play.
I personally suspect that if Mr. Cheney, who is a native Mississippian Negro, had been alone at the time of the disappearance, that this case, like so many others that have come before, would have gone completely unnoticed.
I did have some sense that if the story was allowed to deteriorate into, oh, this poor little white girl, that it would be offensive to everyone concerned.
Rita went on to the White House, and she met Lyndon Johnson, and he welcomed her to the White House, and she said very bluntly, she said, "Mr. President, this is not a social call. I've come to find out where my husband is." And she got chewed out by the press secretary, who said, "You don't talk to the President of the United States like that." Rita simply said, "We do."
I saw this Miss Schwertner this evening. Yeah. The wife of the missing boy. Yeah. She's a communist, you know. No, but she acted worse than that. Yeah, so? Yeah, she was awfully mean and very ugly. And she came in this afternoon. So she wants thousands of extra people put down there and said I'm the only one that has the authority to do it. I told her I'd put all that we could efficiently handle, and I was going to let you determine how many we could efficiently handle.
On Thursday, President Johnson ordered sailors from Meridian Naval Air Station to augment state and federal law officers who were conducting the search. There have been reports that they were seen in other states. None of these reports proved out, and so far, neither has the search.
On August 4th, 1964, at the Mount Olive Missionary Baptist Church in Meridian, Mississippi, Pete Segal gave a concert. You know, we were all into James Brown and all of that, and here, you know, we got a guy who's a folk legend that comes to Meridian, and we were told that he's going to do this concert.
It was a small church, so there were about 200 people there, and I'd been singing to them, I guess, on a slight raised platform, probably near the pulpit. And I'd gotten them singing with me.
And all of a sudden, in the middle of a song that he was singing, someone came over and whispered into his ear. He stopped, and he got up and made an announcement.
The bodies of Schwerner, Goodman, and Cheney have just been discovered. They were buried deep in the earth. There wasn't any shouting. There was just silence. I saw lips moving as though they were in prayer.
He asked us to join hands and sing, "We shall overcome, my Lord. We shall overcome. Someday we shall overcome."
I got a call late in the evening, at least this nightmare of unknowing, or at least not officially knowing, was over.
The bodies of Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner were flown to New York. They had a separate funeral there. Fannie Lee Cheney flew to New York to be at that funeral. The families by then were so together, even though they had never met before. The mothers locked arms and walked out of the church together. In Mississippi, a memorial service was held for James Cheney.
The decision had been made by family members and local leaders and others that they want to keep this very quiet and then low-key, rather, did their eulogy.
I want to talk about is really what I really grieve about. I don't grieve for Cheney because the fact I feel that he lived a fuller life than many of us will ever live. I feel that he's gotten his freedom. We're still fighting for it.
Dave Dennis's speech was a turning point in the summer because everybody wanted him to say the usual things that you would say at a funeral. And Dave Dennis just couldn't do it.
He challenged the people at the memorial, and he challenged the whole movement.
You see, we all tired. You see, I know what's going to happen. I feel it deep in my heart when they find the people who killed those guys in Neshoba County.
All the different emotions, things that have been going through, leading up to this particular moment, began to come out, boil up in me, might call this. And then looking out there and seeing Ben Chaney, James Chaney's little brother, I lost it. I totally just lost it.
Don't bow down anymore. Hold your heads up. We want our freedom now. I don't want to have to go to another memorial. Tired of funerals. Tired of it. Got to stand up.
And so from this place, right, from this place of what happened in Mississippi, and that was the courage of the civil rights workers, and there was the courage of the everyday person in Mississippi who registered to vote and who worked alongside, who took the courage of everyday people to stand up to what was happening, which was their daily experience in Mississippi. I won't say much more. I'd like to invite Bill Quigley, who is a dear friend and mentor for many of us, whose words I think have taught many of us about how to be a radical lawyer. For those of you that don't know Bill, it's very hard to give an introduction to Bill, but Bill is a law professor and director of the Gillis Long Poverty Law Center at Loyola College of Law in New Orleans. He's a former legal director at CCR. And Bill has been one of those lawyers in the South that comes out of the tradition of folks that fought against what was happening in Mississippi. And Bill has been in New Orleans for many years, fighting on public housing issues, on civil liberties, against the School of the Americas, bringing in a human rights and internationalist framework. I've asked Bill to come and to talk to us a little bit about sort of, after grounding ourselves in this moment, how do we want to move forward? How do we want to think about our role in social movements? So Bill?
Good morning. I don't know if this is on. Is it on? My name is Bill Quigley, and I didn't see this clip, before this morning, and so I come here with a lot of humility and a lot of a big, my heart is very full. So I hope you will join with me in talking a little bit about some lessons that I think that are there for us, and accept the fact that I am you. I am humbly here to explore how to find answers and how to work with other people the same as you are. I'm not here to give you the answers. I'm here to explore those things with you. And this is an extremely hard thing to follow. So with that, if you could go ahead and put that up. Okay. Purvi and I talked about this. Purvi did tell me she was going to show this, but I didn't get to see it, so I didn't know which part they were going to do. I didn't realize it was going to be like a locomotive run through the middle of our room. So we talked a little bit about what are some of the lessons from this and what's our call of action. And I'm going to go through fairly quickly because we're going to try to hold on to this schedule that we have, because there's so many wonderful things. I have to thank Purvi and the team, because this is honestly the most beautiful conference I have ever seen on this subject or any other subject in terms of the richness of it. So there's a lot of opportunities for all of us here. So, where do we start? What do we pull from the experiences that some of us know, some of us have read about, and the like? This was a time of incredible organizing in the face of incredible resistance. These days, I've been with people who say, well, let's have a march. We'll do a march and then things will change, right? Well, a march today is quite different from a march of what they did. Because people who marched then, they put their house at risk, they put their kids at risk, they put their job at risk, and they literally put their lives at risk. Now, we have some people in this room who do that on a daily basis, and you will get to hear from them in some of the conferences. But it is not just, well, we're going to pick up a sign and we're going to talk. It is the question of risk. What I saw, and I was alive during this was such an exciting time. I was not a lawyer yet at that time, but I pulled a couple of things out of it that I think are applied to us today. The concept of truth, facing the truth, being willing to say what the truth is and let the chips fall. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. Secondly, a willingness to be uncomfortable, a willingness to risk, a willingness to try to do something that we don't exactly know what we're doing, but we are doing it because it is the right thing to do, combined with a real sense of hope, because hopeless people do not take risks like this. Right? Hopeless people do not take a risk of life or job or career or things like that to make the world a better place, because it takes hope. It takes hope in others and hope in what we can do together. It is a challenge. This idea of community, Purvi already talked about it. I like to say there's no solo justice acts. Okay? There's no one person bringing about justice in this world. Everybody. It is a team sport, okay? So the team that you're on this summer or the team that we're on, a lot of us are on a lot of different teams, but the community is extremely important. And then this idea of love. Not the Hallmark card love, not the little pastel flowers and stuff like that, but the real love of people who are willing to do something and take a risk for themselves, for their kids, for their grandchildren, for other people. The love of a mother who will dash into traffic to try to save her child. That kind of love, the love that goes with all of these things. So these are the truths. I think there's particularly in coming out of law school and in the United States particularly, there's this thing of, well, look, we have accomplished so much. We're not like that anymore. We have progressed, we have these new laws, all this other stuff, but there are some very, very ugly truths in our lives, and we have to have our eyes open to be able to see those truths. And we can't just be saying, well, yeah, but things are a lot better here, a lot better there. We need that part as well, but we do have to be able and be willing to see the truth. These folks showed us a willingness to look at the truth. They showed us a willingness to be uncomfortable, to have the courage that goes with being uncomfortable, to take some action. The risks that they took, we saw some of that already. This idea of just being willing to stand for what is right, no matter what the consequences. The consequences for this individual are very clear. Have a German Shepherd jump onto your chest and tear at your clothes. I can't even imagine what that would feel like. But that is the kind of risk, and not just the physical risk, but the mental risk, the financial risk, and the like. The challenge of being willing to go into other places, to talk with other people, to listen to other people, to learn from people that we don't know about, and the idea of community. All of these things I think we can pull from what they did, the way that they were able to do, and obviously the willingness to give up your life for others, the willingness to put in your career for others, the willingness to be in solidarity with people. So today, I think the challenge for us, and Purvi and I talked about, is to open up our imagination and open up our hearts. Law school, again, is to be a social justice person in law school is swimming upstream, right? The legal system, the courts, the executive, the legislative branch, they are not set up to bring about justice for the people that we are in solidarity with. They are set up to facilitate business transactions and to move one pile of money from one side of this room to the other side of this room, and then to try to move it back, you know, and have people well paid on either side of that in terms of representing individuals, human rights, civil rights, and the like. That it takes imagination. I know you have it, you wouldn't be here. This is an opportunity, this is like a booster shot for us, right? This is a chance for us to rediscover, recommit, re-energize in what we're doing. So this is Rodney Harrison. He just graduated from Loyola Law School, and he's right now studying the bar in New Orleans. But a week ago, we had a fire at our place. I work in New Orleans at Loyola Law School. We had a fire on the second floor of our clinic building. And people weren't sure what was going on. First, there's smoke coming, and then they realized there's a lot of smoke coming out of this one room, and there was something definitely wrong. Pulled the fire switch, cops are coming, the people are coming, and everybody's saying, get out, get out. Time to evacuate, everybody out of this place. Well, there was a number of our clinic students who were studying for the bar who were in a different section of the building, and Rodney Harrison starts coming through the crowd, and they're going, you've got to leave, you have to leave, the fire is that way. He said, no, I am going towards the fire. I'm going to the fire. He said, I am a firefighter. He says, that's my job. You know, I'm studying for the bar and all that, but I am going to the fire because the fire is where I need to be. And the fire is where some action needs to be taken. And he got to the fire before anybody. He found the fire extinguisher nobody could find, you know, and kept the fire down until the big fire truck showed up with some other equipment. And I think I was scrambling, trying to figure, what is a story? What is something that we're doing today? And I think that's one of our themes, is to go to the fire. Everybody else is trying to get away from the fire. We're trying to be comfortable. We're trying to be prosperous. We're trying to have lives that give us enough recreation and enough other things to do. But our job as social justice advocates is to go towards the fire. And that is countercultural, and it's different than what everybody else is doing. Now, again, it's not so smart to go toward the fire if you're the only one going toward the fire. So that's part of the thing. But I think this is part of it for us. So in running towards the fire, what is the fire and what do we need to do? Again, we need to recommit to this idea of radical change. And we have to say it openly, and we have to be comfortable with it to be able to say it. And radical in the sense that Ella Baker taught us about, which is root, right? That's the Latin meaning. The Latin term radical comes from root. We're not just talking about giving people different medications in jail. We are talking about abolishing jail. We are talking about radically transforming the criminal justice system that we have, not getting people a little more of this or a little more of that. We may be doing some of that work as well, right? I'm not saying that we can't be doing that work, but we have to be oriented toward a radical transformation of these things. To say the criminal justice system needs to be pulled up by its roots. Now, we're not just trimming, we are pulling it up by its roots and doing something else. It came from someplace, and it can go back to someplace. So the radical redistribution of economic and political power, and to not be afraid to say that and to live that and search for that. The truth what does the truth require of us today? The first thing that the truth requires of us in this day and age is to take off our blinders and take off those things that are carefully knitted and comfortable for us, and cashmere and all this other, you know, that the world puts on us. That we are, maybe there's some problems, but we're the best of all possible societies, and we're doing the best that anybody could be expected to do, and we are doing this wonderful work that everybody will understand. Well, what the truth is that there is widespread injustice in many areas. And these are just a few of the areas that we're going to be talking about today. You're going to have an incredible opportunity to talk with people who identify injustices, but also to do what? Not just identify injustice, but figure out how to fight the power. as Purvey said the other day, our job is to fight the power and build the power. Fight what kind of power? Fight the corporate power, the government power, the power of the people who have the power and holding on to the power, but to build the power through this community and love and inspiration and like that we're doing. And each one of these things, there's also some terrible stuff going on, but there's some beautiful stuff going on. It's our job to get in there, go toward the fire, and join the people who are doing something about it. This is a quote that's like 1,500 years old, and one that I think is important because it just does a lot for me. The idea of hope. Hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. And I want to encourage us to identify within us that both of these things are legitimate and both of these things are real. And it's anger at the way things are and the courage to do something about it. You know, we have the Freedom Summer we're celebrating. What's also this week, right? 25 years since Tiananmen Square. Beautiful and so far mostly unsuccessful, but beautiful struggle for justice and truth and that gives us incredible inspiration and opportunity. So it's hope has two beautiful daughters, anger and courage. So anger is good. It's good to have anger, but you just stop with anger, then we're just wasting your time and your energy in that. So but the anger at the way things are and the courage to do something about it, and there's going to be plenty of opportunities for that today. What are we called to do specifically as lawyers, as legal advocates? I think look for the people who are gathering for justice and join them, okay? Many times that's volunteer work, just exactly what you're doing, some of you this summer. Look for confrontations over justice and defend people. Step in and defend people who are fighting and in confrontation over that. Look for the people who are building organizations and use your talents to help them build. They had a great example earlier in the week. Somebody said, I went to law school to be a social justice advocate, but guess what? When I came out, what people needed was different every year. Some year it was taxi cabs, learning the taxi cab regulatory, and another time it was banking issues. You know, another time it was environmental issues. That if you are a lawyer for the people, that is the area of law that we specialize in. We specialize in whatever the people need us to do. We don't say, look, I'm an environmental lawyer. If there happen to be somebody around here who needs an environmental lawyer, then call me up and I'll see if we can fit you into the schedule. It's no. That we look for the people who are gathering and we join them. We look for the fire and we go to it and we say, how can we help? How can we join the team? Not how can we boss or any of that. We know that, of course. Starting with this premise that obviously property rights are secondary to people, but that's a radical thing to actually put into play in the United States. We reverse our perspective. Instead of being at the top and looking down, instead of learning from the New York Times or CBS or something like that, that we learn from the people who are doing the work and who are there. We don't just learn the system, which is what law school is about, but we challenge and transform the system by joining with people who are in confrontation. That the community helps make the decisions and we participate in this circular decision making as opposed to the other kinds that we talk about. And that we are not hung up on rules. If they say, well, look, you know, the rule is that you only get to speak for 2 minutes at the city council, and your people say, to hell with that rule. We're going to do something about it. Our job is, you know, we might be a little bit embarrassed or it might be impolite or something, but people need their chance. And so our job is to try to help people do it. So we do what the people want us to do, if at all possible, and not so worried about the rules, which is sort of the opposite of what we're trained to do, right? And understanding the change is not going to come by individual lawyers filing individual cases, but by social movements. And part of this is the part that we're going to talk about probably later in the day a little bit, is this balance, sustainability. How do you do this for the long run? I know I'm a lawyer now. I was a legal director at the Center for Constitutional Rights. Pam and I were talking earlier. I would never have been hired by the Center for Constitutional Rights coming out of law school. I couldn't have even gotten an opportunity for them to look at my resume. But by staying and doing this work for year after year after year after year, understanding, being taught by the people who I thought I was serving, by being taught by that, then you develop some expertise. But you can't do that by just focusing on injustice and just focusing on anger, that you have to seek out the hope and the joy and the love that are in the exact same places where the oppression and the injustice and the terrible things are. Because we can't, we can't share what we don't have. So we can't be a source of justice and love and hope and expertise if we don't have it. So that's part of what we have to do. We already talked about the justice as a team sport. We got one team in here that's going to talk later on today. Could do they're going to be 50 slides like that to show you the teams that are around and doing wonderful work in the United States and across the world. But this is the key to me, is that I started this work thinking I was going to help people, right? That I wanted. I initially studied to be a priest. I decided I didn't want to be a priest. I didn't really like a lot of that stuff. But I thought I'd be a social worker, and then I ended up in law school because I wanted to help people. It was a helping profession the way I saw it. And then it became clear to me that it wasn't just me helping. I actually was getting much more out of it than I was putting into it. And people were teaching me when I thought I was teaching them. I was learning and people were teaching. So at these places, at death row in Louisiana where I've been and watched people be executed, at Haiti where I've been with some of our comrades there on solidarity stuff, in Baghdad where I've been, in public housing and courts and places, the worst places in the world are also the scene of some of the most beautiful and inspiring things that happen on the face of this earth. And we have to connect with those folks. So the legacy for me that I think we should follow up with today, and the lessons are these. Going back to this one that we all know so well. But the first time I saw this quote, I was insulted. I'll tell you that. It shows you how far I have traveled, but I was insulted by this because I said, I came to help. And so somebody saying, if you've come to help, we don't need you, was insulting to me till I understood the second part of it, to realize I need help. And that my family and my culture and my race and my collective and my neighborhood and everybody, we all are enslaved by different parts of these systems. And it's by learning with people and struggling with people that we develop the independence and the freedom and the ability to be able to stand for justice and do that together. I'll finish with this. This is one of my clients right now. 84-year-old Catholic sister. Her name is Sister Megan Rice. And I visited her earlier this week in the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. She's in prison. She's in federal prison right now for going on to a nuclear weapons construction site in Knoxville, Tennessee. And she was convicted of sabotage against the United States of America, and she's serving a 4-year sentence. She's 84. I told her I was going to be here, and I said, what do you think we should talk about? And she said, I think the number one thing is miseducation, is to unlearn a lot of the things that our society and our churches and our schools and that have taught us, to unlearn that and instead learn liberation and learn the pedagogy of the oppressed, learn how we learn with and from each other, and to strip off the education that we've had. So I think today gives us a great chance to do that. And so that in finishing, that we do this same thing that Rodney Harrison did, the same thing that these other folks had did in this, what we've seen. We fight for liberation. And I have a copy of this available if anybody would like to email me. I'd be happy to send you a copy of it, and you can use it as you see fit or any of those things. So I know we're tight on time. I would like you to join me in thanking Purvey and folks for setting up such a beautiful opportunity for us to learn this stuff.
Bill, it's always a pleasure, and I think part of the reason why we wanted Bill to start us off is his really humble way of grounding us back and probably what is just essential for social justice work, which is love and compassion. And so, Bill, thank you for always being that voice for many of us.